It's a teen talk skating podcast where I embarrass myself. Hello, and welcome to episode number 50 of I Still Need Therapy, or a Teen Talk Skating podcast. My name is Mango, and today we have a very, very exciting episode, which is, probably whatever. I honestly really need to record this episode because literally, I have been, this week has been crazy. I am back in, the public education system of America called school. But I will be continuing to discuss skating every week, so don't worry about that. I hope you all are doing well. I could definitely be doing better. In fact, I decided to write a whole diary entry of every single day of my school week just to, tell you what my week was like. Monday, I wrote, "You ever screw up and you regret your entire existence?" Because I did that on Monday. And Tuesday, I wrote, "I did something really good," because I really did do something really good on Tuesday, and it made me really happy to do that big good thing. On Wednesday, I wrote, "This week just keeps on getting crazier. It's gonna bite me in the butt." Which is quite true. Thursday, I was like, wait, maybe karma does work in my favor. Luckily, because something good happened on Thursday too. And then today was Friday, and I wrote, "Never mind, Jojo Siwa was right. If you know, you know. Jojo Siwa was very right about karma. If you know, you know." Yeah, I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys don't have that much drama and you don't regret your entire existence. If you're back in school slash work slash whatever else you have to do in your life, I hope it's not too boring and going kind of well. For me, unfortunately, quite boring, lots of work, and I don't want to do anything. But anyway, we have a very interesting episode today. So let's move on to the program of the week and just get these things out of my brain, okay? Because I don't even want to talk about what happened this week. I don't want to talk about it. Okay, sorry. You guys don't get to know. Anyway, yeah, time for your program of the week. And it's a fun one, so that's really good. Program of the week. Okay, so your program of the week this week is another ice dance program. I did one last week, and I'm now doing one this week. Which, I just think I'm on my little ice dance, my little ice dance phase, I guess. This week we have a rhythm dance from the 2022 Olympics, and that is from the team from Armenia, Tina Garabedian and Simon Prosenikal, who did a very, very fun rhythm dance that was Aretha Franklin themed. They used 3 songs, I believe. The first one is Respect, which love, The second one is Bridge Over Troubled Water, and then Think by Aretha Franklin. And I just think that this program is just so much fun. I just love Aretha Franklin and this program because I feel like when a skate feels so much fun that it just feels like you're there with the skaters. I think that's the perfect feeling to have. I really like how both of them sing along to the song, specifically Tina Garabedian. She's really sings along to the songs during the program, and that just makes you feel so integrated within the program, so into the program. I feel like a lot of the choreography is synchronized. Both of them do it, and both of them do it at the exact same time, and it's super fun. I feel like they're both divas in this program. It's just so much diva energy from the both of them, and they just seem like we're best friends. We're having fun. Just let whatever scores whatever. Um, Lots of jazz pointy fingers and lots of posing and lots of dramatic movements, and it just makes it so much fun. It's a very lighthearted, very bubbly program. um Let me think. Specific moments between the transition between Respect, the song Respect, and Bridge Over Troubled Water. Simone kind of I don't know how to explain, almost lowers Tina down to the ground and she kind of slides for a little bit. And I think that's the perfect transition, going from one to another with the same time as the music. It's just beautiful. And I just think that this program is just so much fun, and this is just making me happy. Um Let me think. It's just that high energy created by the music and the skating. Is it the most technically difficult skating? Not at all, but it is still beautiful to watch two people having fun on the ice, and I think that you need that when your life is so much chaos. But yeah, Tina Garvadian and Simone Prusenecal watch their rhythm dance at the 2022 Olympics because it's very, very good. Okay, time for your main episode thingamajiggy, okay? Have fun. I mean, I'm gonna have fun. I have to record it. Yeah, we both will have fun. Great. That was your program of the week. Okay, guys. So yeah, so far we had a very dramatic program, or not program week, a very dramatic introduction to the episode of my feelings being spilled out onto podcasting platforms around the world, I guess. But and then we had a very fun program of the week. So karma balancing, right? I don't know anymore. Do I even believe in karma anymore after this week? I don't know. Maybe I do. But this week we have a very popular format for my podcast, and that is a video essay analysis whatnot thing where I take a topic that I find interesting or that is heavily discussed in figure skating, and I analyze the heck out of it because I'm just that person who's just like psychoanalyzing everything, and we explore the reasons why and how and what. I'm like the biggest yapper when it comes to writing essays. I yap so much on every single essay I write. But for this episode, I wanted to focus on a very, very specific topic. I talked about this at the end of last week's episode, a very specific country and very specific discipline. And this week, I want to talk about Japan and their, huge, wide success in single skating in men's singles and in women's singles. Because Japan is really considered one of, if not the most competitive skating nation in the world in terms of single skating, right? We have so many big stars from Japan, not just now that are currently competing, but also retired. So Yuzuru Hanyu obviously is, probably the biggest figure skating star of all time. He's from Japan. Mawasada is also widely known for her figure skating. Obviously landing 3 triple axels at the Olympics, the first for a woman, is a huge achievement from her. Yuzuru Hanyu even was, attempting the quad axel. And you have such huge names from even back then, Midori Ito in the 90s, Yuka Sato, Shizuka Arakawa. And in the men, you have, Daisuke Takahashi and Nobunari Oda. And you just have so many of these big names in figure skating. And guess what country a lot of them are from? And that is Japan. And they've had such huge success since around the early 90s, and they really grew in the 2000s, and now they are now in the 2020s, in the middle of the decade, which is crazy to me because it's been 5 years since 2020. I don't believe that, but in the middle of the decade they've become again one of the biggest skating nations in the whole wide world. And so I really want to analyze this. Like, why is this happening? Who is happening? And how is it happening? And so, I already talked about, yeah, okay. So, yeah. So, in the 2020s, we have really big names. Kari Sakamoto is a 3-time world champion. Yuma Kageyama has medaled at Worlds. He's medaled at the Olympics. Um, who else? Oh my gosh, I'm like blinking. But yeah, so many men and women from Japan in single skating are like, considered, one of the top in their field. Not just in Japan, obviously, but in the international scope, the international aspects of things. Their men and women have, the utmost top technical abilities, are really the ones kind of changing the sport. Maybe not so much the men. The men are landing quads. But I want to specifically focus on the women because we have a lot of Japanese women who are attempting triple axels and a few that are attempting quad toes. Rion Sumiyoshi attempted a quad toe a couple times last season. And so, they are really pushing the technical part of the sport forward. Um, and even on the artistic side, I find that a lot of Japanese men and a lot of Japanese women often come with, maybe more interestingly, artistically done programs, choreographed programs that, challenge what is artistry in the sport. I think a lot of them come with great skating skills, great presentation, great interpretation of the music. And so, why is this happening in Japan? Whereas maybe in other countries, they are not as well as the artistic ability, not as good as the technical side. Why is this happening in Japan? What is happening exactly? And, again, how can other countries maybe even learn from Japan? Which, every country can learn from every country, of course. But, Japan being like the big top dog, I really feel like Japan can be the country that a lot of other countries in the world competing in figure skating can kind of take lessons from, learn from. Why is their technique different than ours and how is it better than ours? And maybe even in what ways it's not as good as ours. Because I don't want to say at all that Japan is a perfect country. They, aren't the strongest at everything. No country is the perfect country. But I will say that Japan can really be seen as a case to learn from for sure. And so, with that being said, we will get started with some statistics. I know I actually did some research, aka Wikipedia everything because, what else? Look, at least I didn't chat GPT it like other people would, but I actually looked on Wikipedia and wrote all the info out myself. Thank you. Okay, so some statistics for kind of a wide, broad scope. Out of the last 30 world championships from 1994 to 2024, 5 of those have been won by a Japanese man. Um, Obviously, Yuzuru Hanyu is in there, Shoma Uno is in there. Who else is in there? I honestly kind of forgot. But yeah, just know that 5 of the last 30 world championships have been won by a Japanese man. That is 1/6 of the world championships in the last 30 years. And that does not even include silver and bronze medals, which, even adding up those medals would be a whole lot more. And then one of the, for the women's side, which is even more impressive, 10 out of the last 30 world championships have been won by a Japanese woman. 33% chance, not chance really, but a 33.3333 repeating decimal it doesn't terminate, whatever. 33.3% of the last 30 world championships have been won by a Japanese woman, which is incredibly impressive that they took 1/3 of the titles. You know what I mean? They didn't let anyone else get it. They took 1/3 of the titles. And that, again, is not including silver and bronze medals. So big names in there like Mawasada, Kari Sakamoto, Miki Ando. Those are really, the top women in Japan who have won 1/3 of the last 30 world championships. Which is no joke at all. No other country can claim that. No other country can claim that they've won 10 of the last 30 world championships in any discipline, I believe. I think. I don't know actually. It depends. But anyway, just know that in Japanese women, 10 of the last 30 is a huge thing. And you might be saying, well, what about like recently? At the Grand Prix final this year, the Grand Prix final being one of the most prestigious competitions in all of figure skating, it is probably the hardest ever to qualify for. You need to win or place really well at 2 other events before you can even consider getting to the Grand Prix final. At the Grand Prix final this year, the most difficult competition to get into, 5 out of the 6 women competing at the Grand Prix final this year were Japanese. It was Kaori Sakamoto, Moni Chiba, Hana Yoshida, Rino Matsuke. Oh my gosh, who am I forgetting? Who am I forgetting? No, this is embarrassing. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Okay, Kaori Sakamoto, Moni Chiba, Wakaba Higuchi, Hana Yoshida, and Rina Matsu. How did I forget Wakaba? But yeah, 5 out of the 6 women competing at the Grand Prix finals here were Japanese, the only exception being Amber Glenn of the USA, which I love, but this is not her episode. I already discussed the US women in a whole nother episode, which is almost a year ago now. But that's crazy. But again, 5 of the 6 women competing at the most difficult event to qualify for in all of figure skating, all being from Japan, is a huge, huge deal and just shows you, again, why Japan is hugely competitive. And another statistic I want to pull up is that even in Japan, their figure skating national competition is the most difficult competition, in my opinion, in all of figure skating. It doesn't matter if you're domestically or internationally. I truly believe that the 2024-2025, specifically this season's competition, their Japanese nationals were like the hardest event ever, the most competitive event. Just for an example, for the men, the men, I feel like statistically this year they were a little bit, kind of off in scores, but just five of the men from fourth place to eighth place all placed within 4 points of each other, which just shows you how like deep and condensed that field is, evenly matched in terms of technical ability that is. The women's event is absolutely crazy because you had women placing sixth. Mako Yamashita, for example, she placed sixth at Japanese Nationals with a score of 200.25, which literally could have won her a Grand Prix this season if she had went to the Grand Prix, which she did not because Japan is so competitive that all these women are competing for Grand Prix spots, that not all of them will be able to get Grand Prix spots. Women like Saki Miyake is a skater who I've seen heavily discussed on Reddit, for example, placed ninth at Japanese Nationals with a score of 196.55, which is a score that may have won her a Grand Prix this season, a Grand Prix medal this season. But Saki Miyake has never competed outside of Japan. She's only competed domestically because the Japanese Federation has never sent her out to international competitions because others, have competed for those same spots. And it's a whole thing that, there's so much depth. There's so much depth in Japan that a lot of these women, have never competed internationally, or they didn't get a Grand Prix spot, and yet they play so well at Japanese nationals. And so, it is one of those things that's maybe not like it's just kind of shocking. You don't really see this happening anywhere else, right? You really don't see this happening anywhere else. That, yeah, some of these women are like placing really, really high, and yet they are not getting assignments because it is just so competitive. Even at Worlds, for example, if you put, those scores that the Japanese women earn at nationals compared to Worlds, like the scores are really like crazy. And I'll talk about kind of judging in Japan and kind of how it's not as biased, I would say, later. But yeah, honestly though, I feel like Japanese Nationals is like the most competitive event of the season. Another example, I feel like Rino Matsuke, who's like one of my most favorite skaters right now, I feel like currently competing. She was at last year's Japanese Nationals. She was only 17th, yet she medaled at 2 Grand Prix this season, qualified for the Grand Prix final this season, and placed quite well at Japanese Nationals this year. So yeah, so again, just some of the biggest well-known names of figure skating come from Japan, and they come from these heavily competitive environments. And that's just to say that this is just the senior level, I would say. As we've seen in the junior level, Japan is also quite dominant in the singles as new skaters come up. So it's not just like this current generation is really competitive, the next generation and the next generation after that are also being seen as quite competitive and will rise up to be obviously the senior generation, and that cycle just keeps on repeating. For example, Mao Shimada is, she's on the junior level, she's landed triple axels, she's landed quad toes, she's been junior world champion twice now, I believe. And, junior Grand Prix final champion, I think 3 times now. And so Mao Shimada is like quite, the skater. She's earning scores that are higher than most senior women are scoring. And then at the junior Grand Prix final this year, again, a super hard competition to qualify for, even as a junior, 2 Japanese men and 3 Japanese women at junior Grand Prix final this year. So, with that being said, that's all the impressive stuff about Japan. All those statistics. Obviously, there's more with, Japanese skaters have set world records. Japanese skaters have, been out there with like the most innovative programs, etc. Why is Japan just so dang successful in single skating? You know what I mean? Why is Japan like the one to beat? Why is Japan the top dog? And, I wrote out a lot of reasons here. I wrote a whole page of reasons, actually, because I'm just so excited to talk about this, obviously, on my very fun podcast. But I would say the most important thing about understanding Japanese figure skating in terms of singles and why they're so successful is that they have a very supportive Japanese skating federation. As you know, every country kind of has a figure skating federation that organizes and controls the skaters for that country. And I would say Japan's skating federation is quite good. They have money. I will talk about this later. They have money, and they are quite good at sending skaters out at assignments most of the time. So for example, a lot of countries will send skaters to Four Continents, which is a competition that is a championship. It's very important. And Worlds, they will send the same skaters to Four Continents, and they will send the same skaters to Worlds. But in Japan, they actually split up the assignments. So different skaters will go to Four Continents, and different skaters will go to Worlds. Well, some different skaters, not all of them. Some different skaters will go to Four Continents and some to Worlds. And then even if you don't go to either of those competitions, you'll often get kind of a minor competition like Challenge Cup in the Netherlands, or oh my gosh, what else is there? There's just a couple of like minor like senior B or senior C level competitions that they will send you out for internationally. Even though you don't, you didn't place the highest at nationals, you still will get a competition. um so obviously, I feel like that is something some other countries don't do, that they don't send their skaters out to, every single competition that they could. And, that is kind of a lack of opportunity that Japan does not kind of struggle with. I would say, yeah, part of it has to do with the general popularity of single skating. In some countries, figure skating is like non-existent. Figure skating is like, what is that? You know what I mean? Figure skating is like, I don't know, like, can Nancy Kerrigan, like Michelle Kwan, you know what I mean? Like it's just not popular anymore, or it had never has been popular. In some cases, it's just never been popular at all. Um, in Japan, I believe I saw one. I think figure skating is the second most popular sport after baseball. Baseball is super popular in Japan, but figure skating is obviously a winter sport, or an ice, winter Olympic sport, and so it is definitely the most popular winter sport, in Japan. And so with so much support, people love to watch figure skating in Japan. That brings in a lot more money, a lot more support, a lot more general spirit and everything, representing your country, everyone's watching you, that kind of thing. It's often said by a lot of skaters who are not from Japan that crowds in Japan are just better. The people watching the audience are just, they're more excited to be there. They clap harder, etc. That the vibe in the arena is always a bit different. There is this general like cult of personality around figure skating in Japan that I don't think you really get anywhere else. And that leads to a lot more financial gain and a lot more emotional or like morale gain, I would say. I would also say that in general, there is a lot better funding and sponsorships, including ice shows. And what I mean by this is that skaters themselves are often have more opportunities to earn money on their own, like on their own right, on their own, without just competing. But besides competing, they have a lot more opportunities outside of competition to earn money. You know, just naming some of these, I know Yuzuru Hanyu, when he was competing, he was sponsored by, I believe, like an airline company that in Japan that was super popular. I believe Mai Mihara is sponsored by Toyota, and I think another company. But a lot of companies look towards Japan and their figure skaters in Japan, or how do you say this? Oh my gosh, Japanese companies often will sponsor Japanese figure skaters because they know those Japanese figure skaters are kind of idols. They're kind of seen as celebrities in Japan. And so obviously what they sponsor will be kind of endorsed and more popular and stuff like that. And so I feel like, Japanese skaters generally get better sponsors and better funding from, the Japanese Skating Federation, who has a lot more money to give to their skaters. Okay, ice shows is a big thing because ice shows are like tours for skaters to go on and do different programs and whatnot. Like, how many ice shows have you seen from Japan? You know what I mean? Like, a lot, a whole lot. One Piece on ice, like, oh my gosh, like, what the heck? Yuzuru Hanyu is obviously running his own ice show independently by himself, choreographing by himself. And then, like, how many of these have you seen elsewhere? Because in countries like the US, we have like Stars on Ice, and that's the main thing, and that's kind of it. You have Stars on Ice Canada. In Europe, you have a few things like Switzerland has music on ice, bowl on ice, and a couple of things like that. But Japan is really, again, the head mastermind when it comes to ice shows. Um, and obviously, where ice shows are, skaters can earn money for being there, and obviously, a lot more, again, fan support. Another reason I would say is that they have good coaches. They have a long history of good coaches, both domestically and internationally. Domestically, I will say is the biggest thing. What you will see a lot, I feel like, in Japanese figure skating is that retired skaters will often coach like new skaters, or up from like a long time back. I would say like retired skaters a long time ago will often coach like the new upcoming skaters. Um, and so, yeah, so really good on coaching internationally as well, because a lot of Japanese skaters will often, again, have the financial means to go train abroad. Yuzuru Hanyu went to train in Canada with Brian Orser, or why am I blanking on examples? Oh my gosh. Let's just move on. But yeah, they have the financial means to go train abroad if they desire, if they deem necessary, because again, domestically they already have a bunch of good um coaches. And with those coaches, obviously they have a lot of good training methods. Obviously, we don't get like a 360 24/7 view of Japanese ice rinks all the time, but we see that, the Japanese skaters generally have good coaches who train them well, who, understand the athlete and understand the body, and understand, how injuries happen, understand how to improve this flow or that flow. I remember Mawasada had to rework her entire technique with a Japanese coach, and she was able to do that. Um, these judges, like, they know different techniques, they know different things to do, they know how to train their skaters efficiently and how to train their skaters well enough to be able to get them where they want to be. So that's on the coaches, but even in the competitions, this is what I mentioned earlier with Japanese nationals being a very comparable competition to an international competition, even probably to worlds, is that the judges in Japan are very good judges. And, to that, I would say that the judges in Japan are quite fair. They're not biased at all towards one skater or another that they're trying to make seem the best. And they're not inflated judging. This is an issue at US Nationals. Like, why are skaters falling and still getting 200 points in the women's event? Why are skaters, under rotating quads and they get called clean still in the men's event? It just doesn't really make sense, and it does feel a little inflated and uncalled at times. But in Japan, the judges are quite fair. If you look at, a score sheet for Japanese nationals, they mark the quarter calls, they mark the under-rotation calls, they mark the unclear edge calls that even their top skaters like Harry Sakamoto or Yuma Kageyama might get on some of their jumps. That, those mistakes are actually being actively pointed out and not just swept under the rug and pretended, no, they don't under rotate anything. Those mistakes are called out, and they are called out in a manner which I think is quite fair, and I think, is kind of realistic. So yeah, it's not inflated, it's not biased. It accurately teaches their skaters what mistakes they're making, what the under rotations they are making, or they need to improve a little bit on their skating skills or their presentation. Unlike some other countries, which will really put big numbers on the screen for the viewers at home to watch, big components that they see. Oh, how artistic that skater is. Those countries might go more for like the big numbers to show their athletes, or not to show their athletes, to show their viewers at home and the audience, like, wow, that skater is so good. Whereas Japan, they don't have that as much, but they are accurately teaching their skaters, here's how you improve. They're not lying to them, they're not inflating their scores. And I think that is quite important to see. Okay. Another thing is that they give their skaters time off of injuries. Some countries just don't give their skaters time off injuries and they make them go compete. I think that's really basic. Give your skaters time off their injuries so they can heal and recover to the ice and don't risk another big mistake. But some countries they don't listen. But yeah. And I also would like to know that I feel like Japan always has the best figure skating costumes. Just saying. That doesn't really help, I feel like, with their single skating, but maybe, they look better. Just in my opinion. In general, they look better. Just saying. Well, I will probably move this section to another part of the video or the episode. Okay. So obviously Japan is doing something right? So what can other countries learn from Japan, right? Japan, I've like been bragging about Japan. I was just like Japan. What can other countries learn from Japan? I honestly would say quite a whole lot. Because obviously, as I said, Japan is clearly doing something right. I do think the popularity of figure skating is a huge motivator in Japan. Again, as I said, crowds bring in money, the crowds bring in emotional support. I do think that is a big, huge motivator in Japan. And obviously that isn't like a click. That isn't just like a super fast thing that you can fix in every country. You can't just suddenly make figure skating popular. But many other countries, admittedly, do not have, such big figure skating celebrities as they do in Japan. And so, some questions to think about, when was the last time a skater was like a huge household name that everybody knew in the US? When was the last time a skater was like a huge household name in like France or in Canada? Like when were they like the people to be? Like everyone knows who they are, they're so like well known, etc. I honestly can't remember specifically for the US. There has been some, hubbub here and there around the Olympics about Nathan Chen and, you know, Hubble and Donahue and, Alyssa Liu and things like that. But it's not like the level of popularity in Japan where everyone's like flocking to go watch these events. In the US, in Canada, in France, in many countries around the world, figure skating is not like a huge like moneymaker, I guess. And so it doesn't really bring in a lot of money. And so, that is something that, again, they can't fix right away. I, have done an episode about why popularity is dying in the US and what they can do about it, kind of. Obviously, every country is kind of like a case by case basis. How can they improve? How can they improve their marketing, their skills, their persuasiveness, etc.? Their general just appreciation for figure skating as a sport, I feel like, is another thing. Um, and so I really do think that popularity of figure skating is a huge thing that is probably the biggest hurdle, I would say, for figure skating countries. But maybe also kind of one of the bigger hurdles is money, right? Money, unfortunately, kind of rules the world, right? And if you don't got money, you don't got a lot. So I think that the general financial support for skiers is incredibly helpful. Japan, again, they have tons of sponsors in Japan, tons of federation support in Japan that other countries often don't have. Yeah, other skaters, they will do some small sponsorships here and there. If you're a really big skater like Nathan Chen, for example, got like a free car or something from Toyota, or like I think he got another one for his mom or something. I don't even know. But if you're like a huge skater, like you could get some sponsorships. But if you're like a smaller skater, it is definitely harder to get sponsorships without having big results behind you. And so that is a little, off putting, a little detrimental for skaters who don't have all this huge financial or not all this huge competitive success is that if you don't have that huge competitive success, like the money ain't coming. The money ain't going to you. And unfortunately that is the case for a lot of skaters in other countries that are often having fundraisers for to support their career. They're often doing GoFundMe's, or they're often, going to spend their time to do something. They often have another side job, even alongside, all the crazy things going on in their lives, like studying or family or anything, that they have to raise their own money. They don't get money from other people. They gotta like raise their own money from other people. Their fans, asking their fans to go donate money to them to support them. It is a common reality for a lot of figure skaters. And so having a more financial support for skaters so that they might not do that, or they might not have to do that so often, is incredibly helpful when it comes to figure skating. And so, money is kind of generated by the fans, right? By the viewers. If you have more fans of a sport, naturally that sport is going to sell out arenas more. It's going to sell out, online streaming services more. And so, not having fans and not having viewers does kind of like, where the money ain't coming. And so that might be not available everywhere. And again, that's not gonna fix everything. Money is not gonna fix everything at all. Money is not gonna fix everything. I just feel like it'd be a big help along, with people's coaching expenses and their skating and their travel expenses, their food expenses, their hotel cost money. We be having these competitions in like the biggest, most expensive cities in the world. Like, and these figure skaters are already spending so much money on their training. And so I think that money is quite the problem in figure skating that seems to kind of have down, not a lot, or they do have a lot of support in terms of finances that, other countries kind of don't have. Another thing with Japan is that they are so good, as I mentioned, at judging their skaters and teaching them accurately with good feedback. Because I often watch, U.S. nationals. It's mostly U.S. nationals. Just saying. Sorry, U.S. I'm a proud American, I promise. Um, I'll be watching U.S. nationals and like a jump looks clearly under rotated on TV, and I go check the protocol after the competition, and no, it wasn't called under rotated at all. It was called clean. How did that happen? How did that happen, U.S.? I don't know. It's like the only mistake they'll call out in the U.S. is a fall. Like it's really ridiculous sometimes. It's like that jump was obviously under rotated, and they still gave full points for it. And that's, it gets skaters high scores so they can go impress the general public, but that's not teaching your skaters at all accurately. That's not teaching your skaters how to skate properly at all. I often think components is another thing. They'll just give out, okay, whoever has the best technical score, you get the best components, like automatically, no question. That is just something like that's just like why? You know what I mean? Like, what about the skaters who actually like have good components but not maybe good artistry? The judges need to like get it together. You know what I mean? Get it together, and call out those under rotations. So yeah, funding, coaching, judging, and general federation like support, right? Because a lot of skaters, I will say, I feel like Canada is one of the biggest like perpetrators of this crime in the figure skating community. I often see a lot of people on Reddit being like, "Why didn't Canada send out a skater to this competition? Why didn't Canada send out a woman when there's 3 spots they could have sent so for women at this competition? Why didn't they send a man out to the competition?" It does happen in the U.S., does happen in other countries in Europe specifically as well. That like, hey, why didn't there was a competition open? Why didn't you send a skater there? I feel like that is a big thing. I feel like Japan tends to send a lot of skaters out to a lot of competitions. Um, so they can get more experience and they can get, more, competitive prowess under their belt. They understand the judging system. They understand where they need to improve. And obviously having international judges judge your skate over domestic judges is always probably going to be kind of a better result. At least you get more feedback. And so other countries need to really improve on, sending out their skaters to competitions and not just like the same 2 skaters that have the best scores. Hey, send out the skaters who don't maybe get the best scores, let them get a little bit more competitive experience because otherwise they're just sitting there like sitting ducks and you're not doing anything with them. Um, it's almost like resources. I don't want to say see skaters as resources, but it's almost like, splitting your resources evenly. Like you have all these surplus amount of skaters that want to go skate, want to go abroad, want to go travel, want to go compete in another place, and you're not sending them. Like, you know what I mean? Like that is kind of like a recurring issue. I feel like sometimes there's hair in my lip. Oh my gosh. That skaters are often getting the butt end of the stick and saying, no, we're only letting like the top 2 skaters go to competitions this whole season, and you're not. I feel like that is kind of a problem. But when they do go out, we had people like Catherine Medlin Spence, for example, of Canada. She went to her first international, I believe, second international competition, and which was the Warsaw Cup, the Challenger Series Warsaw Cup. And she won the whole competition, which was, absolutely crazy. She won the whole entire competition, um, making her international debut there, winning the competition, getting, really decent scores, and just being amazing. You know what I mean? Just being amazing. And so, really good result for her, obviously. And similar things could happen if more countries sent their skaters out. And you never know, right? You really never know that they might get their minimums or worlds or Europeans or four continents and be able to compete there as well. Okay. And so that's what other skaters or other countries can learn from Japan. This last part is not really related to specifically success of singles in Japan. It is related, but it's not really why it's being successful. What I want to talk about is the effects of singles skating on pairs and ice stands in Japan. Because if you notice, Japan is a huge country, strong and huge in their singles, their men's and women's single skating is like their bread and butter. Pairs and ice dance, however, have historically been kind of Japan's weaker fields where they don't have as many skaters who are competing. They don't have as many teams that are earning high scores or medals internationally, etc. They've actually never won an Olympic medal in either discipline in pairs or ice dance, which I feel like is sure to change soon, specifically in pairs that I will discuss later. But I find that perhaps, and I want to say perhaps because I'm not sure, but I feel like perhaps that the huge emphasis and the popularity of single skating really drives new skaters, up and coming kids, right? Kid skaters. They kind of drives them away from pairs and from ice hands in hopes of being successful by themselves in men's and women's singles. And in fact, a lot of pairs and ice dance couples in Japan, they started off as single skaters originally. They started off as men's and women's skaters, competing there first, learning their jumps, learning their triples, etc. And then after a little bit, they decide to go into pairs and ice dance. So these skaters are not training for pairs and ice dance right away, which I know not a lot of people do, but they spend a significant amount of time in singles before they transition to pairs and ice dance. Whereas maybe in other countries, they start pairs and ice dance quite younger, like for example, Tessa Virtue, Scott Moyer, who I discussed last week from Moulin Rouge, they started when they were like 8 and 10 or something like that. Or was it like 7 and 9? It was like super, super young. Whereas other skaters in Japan might start in their teens in pairs and ice dance, and they might start in their 20s. And I'm not going to say that this is like it for Japan. Like pairs and ice dance is never going to get better. It has gone a whole lot better, specifically these last few seasons. New pairs and new ice dance couples are kind of popping up here and there. Miura and Kihara in pairs, specifically, they have been world champions in 2023. Yeah, in 2023. And then they medaled silver last year in 2024. And so, yeah, Miura and Ryuichi Kihara have been a really strong team in pairs specifically. That show that Japan is getting stronger specifically in the pairs field. In the ice dance field, we have a lot of ice dance teams that are kind of up and coming. Every so often, we get a really good ice dance team, like Muramoto and Takahashi. Just 2 seasons ago, they won a medal at Four Continents, and they won a Challenger Series as well. Then it's Ten Memorial, and what else? Let me think. But yeah, a lot of Japanese ice dancers are up and coming as well. And again, also on the junior level, you're seeing that on the junior level, which is a really good thing because obviously those junior skaters are going to become senior skaters. But overall, there is a huge emphasis on single skating that I find that kind of brings down the emphasis on pairs and ice dance. But still, I do feel like there is a strong possibility of a Japan team medal. Cohesively, I think it is still a strong country in all of their disciplines, with singles really being the one that boosts them up, that pushes them forward most. And so I would not be surprised if Team Japan will win a team event medal at the Olympics next year, which is crazy that they are in about 1 year and like a little bit, 1 year and a month, really, which is absolutely crazy, obviously. But yeah, overall, really interesting development from those two disciplines, from pairs and from ice stands. Just something I wanted to know because, again, singles is super successful, pairs and ice stands, maybe not so much. Why is that happening? I really do think it's because of this huge emphasis on single skating, which, goes to show that, like I said earlier in this episode, Japan is by no means the perfect nation, the perfect country in figure skating. There are things they can learn from successful countries in pairs and ice stands, such as Italy in pairs, the US and ice stands, Canada and ice stands, perhaps on how they can manage that. But this sport is quite wholesome, okay? We can learn from each other, you know what I mean? We can all learn. And so overall, Japan is quite the successful country in single skating and will continue to be so for the foreseeable future. I really do see nothing catastrophic gonna happen. Sorry. I burped again. Oh my gosh. I really see nothing kind of catastrophic happening that, oh my gosh, they're gonna run out of money or, their president is gonna order all skaters to do something. I don't know. I don't think that's gonna happen. And so I really do think the most interesting question to ask is, will other countries kind of rise to the occasion to meet Japan in that single success that they really do have? And it is, the story of Japan itself and as a figure skating country is super significant. It hasn't been like the top country since the beginning of figure skating in the 1890s and the 1900s. It's really just recently, at least recent in the general history of figure skating. In the last 30 years, it's really become one of the biggest figure skating countries, producing Olympic champions, world champions, etc. Whereas obviously other countries like the US have been in the sport, have been a very big competitor in the sport for a much longer time period and also have achieved a lot of success. But Japan has kind of evolved at kind of like an alarming rate. Not to be a little cringy, but we did learn in my history class about like Japan and like industrialization, like huge growth in a short amount of period of time. And to compare, my history teacher would be so proud of me right now. To compare Japan, that kind of have a similar kind of thing in figure skating. They have a huge amount of growth in a short period of time is super important when it comes to looking at Japanese figure skating compared to other countries that have a lot slower growth over a large period of time, which, mathematically is very interesting, I guess. I don't know if it's math, but you know what I mean? So yeah, that is all I wanted to say about Japan. I know I've probably said the word Japan like 2,000 times in the last, 40-ish minutes, but it is like crazy to think, like in the grand scheme of things, just how good Japan is. And are they unbeatable? Who knows? We will definitely see if other countries can overtake them, kind of in that general scheme of things. I don't know why I'm singing. I should stop singing. So that is all for this episode of the Teen Talk Skating Podcast. My name is Ango. I hope you enjoyed my huge rant on Japanese figure skating and just how amazing, amazing, amazing it is. I hope you all are gonna do well this next week. I don't know how I will do. It was chaotic this week, and so I expect the same thing. Next week I will have previews for probably. Okay, it is a little iffy because the timing of things this season is not the best for me in terms of competitions and everything. But I will definitely do a preview for U.S. Nationals as I live in the U.S. and so I, have access to the U.S. and I'll be watching U.S. Nationals and everything. I will probably review Korean Nationals and I will probably review Canadian Nationals next week. I believe that's gonna happen next week, so I can do that as well. Let me think. Okay, maybe not. Maybe we won't do that next week. It will probably maybe the week after. But I will review US or preview US Nationals. I will review Korean Nationals and we will figure it out. And after that is Europeans previews. Then I will discuss U.S. Nationals. Then I will discuss Europeans. And so it'll be 4 back-to-back competition-related episodes. And so this is the last video essay for about a month or so, probably. But I will still probably have something out. I have tons of fun ideas for video essays like all the time. It's like I'll think in the shower about it. But yeah, next week check us out, check me out. That doesn't make sense either. Next week check my podcast out for a preview of US Nationals and a review of Korean Nationals. My name is Mango. I hope you enjoyed episode number 50. We're halfway to 100, episode number 50 of a Teen Talk Skating podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode on how crazy Japan is in single skating and its effects on their ice dance and pairs fields. I will see you next week for a preview of US Nationals and a review of Korean Nationals. And I hope you have an amazing, amazing week. Catch you next Saturday. Bye bye.